has been with Lucius for how long?
See, and that's the question I've always had in my head. Was Dobby from the Blacks or the Malfoys?
He always seems younger, so I almost wonder, and we don't know Elf lifespans, do we?
Not that I'm aware of. We know
Okay.
Creature lived for freaking ever.
Yeah, right. But he was also like visibly physically old and crotchety.
Right.
So Dobby always seems like a much younger elf, and his need for adventure, I guess.
I
I
have a
almost feel like
headcanon
he was
about
born.
Dobby.
Okay. I feel like he was born at Malfoy Manor. Like I feel like Lucius is older than he is.
Which is
What's
very possible. I think that I would agree there.
I would
Yeah.
agree with that too. I almost thought that Dobby was, I was born in my headcanon. Dobby was born at Malfoy Manor to two other much older elves and was a gift to Lucius for having a son. So we get Dobby at
Oh,
when Draco is born, but he's still Lucius's elf.
okay.
Because Abraxas would have been
As he was
alive and he
doing
would have
that.
been very proud of him for having had a son to pass on the name.
Oh, you're
Wo-
saying so Abraxas lived in the house, Lucius lived in the house,
Right.
even
I
though the
think
elf had
Oh, okay.
stormed there and he became Lucius's elf.
So
Gotcha.
Dobby's parents were still in the house.
Now
And
that's
what
funny because I think there's a part of me that strongly feels like I agree with what you're saying. And Dobby was absolutely Lucius's personal elf, like his major domo.
Mhm.
yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
but I also feel like Lucius had two or three others.
Mhm.
Oh, for sure.
Not like the family had two or three other elves. I mean, like Lucius specifically had
Yeah.
one elf
Oh.
that helped with his food, one elf that would, polish his desk and his office. Like, I feel like he personally had several elves. You know what I mean? Because he's just
Dobby was his to-go elf.
Dobby was his get things elf.
I was gonna say I picture Dobby as, and this probably is because of my Tinder profile, you'll see later. I picture Dobby as the butler elf, the go-to elf, the elf that did all the things that weren't just household things. He helped dress Lucius. He helped Lucius with correspondence. He helped Lucius with answering the door.
So you think he's the
Bring it
major
down.
domo?
I think he's the major domo too.
I don't
But I
think he
don't think
is.
the
too
other
young.
elves belong to Lucius. I think the other elves belong to the Malfoys as a family, the cleaning elves, the cooking elves,
Hey,
the
here's my problem. I feel
farming elves to watch
older
the
elf is the major domo. Like or like
Yeah.
the head elf in the house is in charge. And I don't feel like that's Dobby. I feel like Dobby was one of the younger elves, maybe still in training.
right.
And he's the one that Lucius kept close to training him.
That's how I felt.
Like, not that he's Lucius's most trusted elf. Does that make sense?
Yes.
He
No, I
he
agree.
may
I think
have
so too.
he may have even been training him for Draco for when Draco gets married and starts his own household. It's interesting
Yeah.
though because doesn't Draco make a comment about like we've lost our house elf or you lost me, something like that? Because
You know what's
that would
funny you say
indicate
that? I don't remember Draco mentioning a house elf once in the books.
Me neither.
I swear
In
he
the
does.
movie, Lucius says you lost me my house elf to Harry.
My
No,
But I
he
don't
says you
remember
lost me
Draco
my servant.
or whatever. But I don't remember Draco ever even mentioning house elves.
I feel like, you know what, and I'm due for a reread anyways, and I'm not doing much of anything else. So I'll read it and get back to you guys.
Cool.
But that would indicate that it is more of a loss. Like if they have a ton of house elves, eh. I keep picturing Downton Abbey, and I don't see Dobby as Carson. I see him as like
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. I'm totally with
Rose Leslie, or
Right?
something along those lines.
So here's a question. not Dobby, and yes, still to Lucius, do you think any of the house elves were playmates for Draco? Not just nanny, but pseudo playmate. He's an only child who, regardless of anything else, lived in a super freaking huge house.
Not for Draco. For
Not
for
for-
other pureblood children, sure. Not
Like
for
I
Draco.
could see Barty Crouch Jr. absolutely playing with
Yeah.
Winky. I can see if Hepzibah Smith had
Yeah.
children or grandchildren, her house elf absolutely played with those children. Draco was told from the moment he could put a pacifier in his mouth, you are above this menial, disgusting creature. Don't even pay attention to it.
See, and I feel like, as we've discussed, Narcissa was, she loved her son, but he would have been snotty for the first 5-6 years.
Oh yeah.
And Lucius was busy being evil incarnate. So when it was time for little Draco to go ride on his broom, like his toy, I feel like they would have said, Skabippy, go with Draco. And Draco would have been first 4 or 5 years of his life playing with, even though he was being minded by house elves.
I feel like it would be more of a possibility that he would invite playmates over, or they would invite people over for him to play with to make sure that he made friends with the right crowd. So
Yep.
you have
2,
baby
3
crab
years
and
old.
goyle. Yeah. Oh
Yes.
yeah.
And
Hundred
baby
And
percent.
I
crab and
think that the
goyle.
house elves would have been there to supervise and be used by the children, even if
Yeah.
it was cruel, but in cruel ways.
They out that yeah. I they probably played pranks on them. The house elves were there to
The listeners can't see that my bottom lip is poked out sadly because those poor house elves.
yeah.
Yeah. By the
Yeah,
way,
that's Malfoy Manor.
slaves were not actually happy.
We're not going into slavery. Okay, we are not going into slavery on this discussion.
They are
We're talking
loyal. They
house
like
elves.
it. What do
How do
you
I
mean?
not?
We all
Like that?
agree that it was slavery. We are not going to delve into American history.
Come on, that was
Okay.
funny though.
It was
So,
it. Oh
That's
well,
not the
I don't
point.
know if I'm allowed to laugh, but
You're allowed to laugh. That was funny.
Not the point. Anyway, okay. So Lucius grew up. If you believe that they have lived in this manner, all of the history of the Malfoys living in that area in Wiltshire,
sure.
he grew up in that manner with house elves. Do you think at any point in his life he cared about any of them?
I think Lucius did. I think as so wait, hear me out. I think as a child, he also had a lonely childhood, which is one of the reasons that he was so passionate about Draco, like having people over and having people to play with. He had a very lonely childhood. He did not get along with his father. He had one house. It's like a Tyrion Lannister situation. He had one house elf that he was very close to, and then bad things happened to that house elf, and he learned on a very deep and awful level not to befriend house elves.
Wow.
You know what? I could totally get behind that. I think
I
that's
got
also
you.
why he would make sure it was very clear to Draco. This is your space. This is the house elf space, high and low, highborn, lowborn, and never let those ideas cross.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know why that story sprung fully formed into my head.
That part. I don't disagree with any of that story. I think it's sprung fully formed into your head very well. But I guess this is where my puffiness happens.
Yep.
I feel like the nanny elves had to have formed some sort of camaraderie and friendship, we'll put that in quotes, with these children they raised. Like even Abraxas at some point in his childhood was friends with his nanny elf or loved his nanny elf. And now I agree. I think something probably happens around 9 years old where the father says, stop acting like a baby and kills the elf in front of them. But up until that horrid moment that, that
The fact that TC and I both just like nodded our heads in agreement.
right.
Like, yeah, yep. That's what
Up
happened.
until that family moment, I think that the house elves would have been playmates or seen by the child as playmates.
For some, maybe.
I think I agree with you until Draco. I think Lucius, I love Sam's headcanon. I'm right there. Something happened because Lucius seemed genuinely moved in some way, not in the normal, oh, a servant is gone, but like, damn it, my servant is gone. Like, Lucius had formed an attachment to a house elf.
Was it an attachment, or was it that's a lot of secrets that are now just out and about?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I think he had formed an attachment young. He had been punished in some way for forming that attachment. He ensured his son did not form that attachment, but it didn't stop him from growing up and seeing house elves as something he wanted to, like, subconsciously wanted to feel an attachment to again.
Now, here's where I will disagree. And the reason I say that is because we learn from Davi the punishments. And if you are someone who wants to form an attachment to something, you can't abuse it like that.
But that's the thing. Here's where I'm going to go. Come with me. It's a crazy train I'm taking. That is why Lucius made the decision to teach the house elves to punish themselves, because it was too hard for him. I know. I'm going on a limb. Just
okay. All right. I'll let you.
I'm taking a crazy train.
Beyonce had the best album. Go ahead.
He actually taught the house elves to punish themselves because he did not want to be emotionally moved by seeing them suffer. It was easier to just let them suffer away from him and be done.
Okay, I like that your fantasy world exists. But I'm going to say, since Hermione got all up, we know she did some research, and she got all up in her feelings about how house elves are treated. I'm going to say that the punishment of elves was probably a norm thing. Like, the Malfoy elves weren't the only ones punishing themselves. You know what I mean?
I think it's also very probable that he's ironing his hands so they don't do something worse.
Right?
I think that's a possibility. I do think we have to look at the other house elves we see, though. Like, I don't see Barty Crouch genuinely punishing Winky. His big punishment that Hermione got all up in arms about was firing her. Like, Hepzibah Smith, her Elsa went to jail posthumously because they accused her house elf of killing her. Like, we don't see other house elves mistreated to the level we see Dobby.
But we don't talk to those elves. That's the thing I want to make sure we remember. We don't get to talk to most of those elves. We hear about them. We learn a little about them. We don't know what the Crouch household was like. She may have been ironing her hands once a week. And it could be a very normative thing.
It could be. Like, Creature's devotion to RAB could be despite the punishments he got. Like, that's possible.
But also think about the magic. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but we also see that he loved RAB because he treated him well, unlike the brother and other people.
I'm with you.
And we see that again because Harry all of a sudden is like realizes, oh, if I treat this house elf well, you're right. There's a lot of there's a lot of levels to it. The loyalty
Right.
is to the point where he can't even